good to see everybody. Last week, Pastor Josh launched our Peter series, and they took a look at the end, kind of like to the end of the thing. And there's this really good principle, right? If you look at the end, if you look at where you want to get to, and if we look at Peter's life, we see that Peter was living a life that went from point A, which is when he began to follow Jesus, to the end, which was, when he was a leader, he was an elder, he was kind of a person who led all that was going on in some of the churches, and it was he was an amazing study of what it is to get from point A to point B. And a lot of times when we look at some of those things, we kind of design things by looking at the end and going. I mean, you think about it. An architect, when they are designing, they're designing with a concept. They're trying to learn what the client wants, and they are drawing out plans, and they're coming up with designs, and sometimes those designs are a little more elaborate than what the people want, but they do all these things, and then you build to get there, right? You're developing this idea, but everybody starts someplace, right? Everybody starts at a spot, and everybody's starting position isn't the same all the time. I mean, probably a little more normal. This is spring break, and so there are people who went on vacation, and somebody in the family had to plan that vacation. I mean, I know there are people who will just get in a car and they'll just start driving and they just go. That seems a little crazy to me. Like I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle the uncertainty of like, where are we going and what are we? So when it comes to vacations in our house, generally I'm planning those, and I have an idea of what we want to do, and then I start to plan some things out and put the details together, and that's how we get to the places we're going to go. And it's kind of a basic, simple principle. It's not that hard. But when you think about it, it really is important to know that we have to develop plans to get to someplace. Well, since we've looked at the end of Peter's life, now we're going to go back to the beginning, and not really the beginning of his life, but the beginning of his call, beginning of where he started following Jesus. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from Peter's calling. And this is the interesting part, is Peter had to be a willing participant in the process. It wasn't enough just for God to call. He had to actually be willing to go along with it. He had to be willing to allow God to mold and shape him and to follow Jesus and to become who God wanted him to be. God knew what Peter needed. God knew what he was needing in the world in which he was living, and he knew Peter could do it. The problem was he just had to convince Peter that he could do it. And sometimes that's what we take, right? Sometimes it takes us being able to be convinced that we can be used by God, and God convincing us. So let's look at Luke chapter 5, beginning with verse 1. It says this: One day, as Jesus was preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, great crowds pressed in on him to listen to the word of God. He noticed 2 empty boats at the water's edge, for the fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. Stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked Simon, its owner, to push it out into the water. So he sat in the boat and taught the crowds from there. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Now go out where it is deeper. Let down your nets to catch some fish." "Master," Simon replied, "we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again." And this time their nets were so full of fish, they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish and on the verge of sinking. When Simon Peter realized what had happened, he fell to his knees before Jesus and said, "O Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man." For he was awestruck by the number of fish they had caught, as were the others with him. His partners, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, were also amazed. Jesus replied to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people." And as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. it's an interesting moment. It's this moment. And as you read the Gospels, there's a couple other accounts where Peter is called. And this one seems to be distinct from probably the other two that are found in Matthew and Mark. So when you think about this one, it seems to be a little different. There's some differences from those and may probably be a separate incident where Jesus is talking with Peter. But the background of that is everywhere Jesus went, because of the things he did and because of the things he taught, crowds pressed in against him. They came and they gathered and they would just come and they'd be there and all that. So the people were hungry for what Jesus was talking about. And so Peter is there and he just happens to be there finishing up his work for the night and it's in the morning and he's working. But the people are there to listen to Jesus and Jesus was teaching there by the lake and demonstrating this, that his message was for everybody. It was for all the people. It wasn't just for the elite. It wasn't just for the leaders and the people who were educated. It was for everybody. See, Jesus wasn't limiting his teaching inside of a building. He was going to the people. And he was out among them. And so the people would find Jesus wherever he was, and they would press in close to hear what he was saying. And so Jesus realizes the crowd is getting large, and the easiest way for him to communicate to such a large crowd was to just push a boat out onto the water a little way, and it would act like an amphitheater. It would do exactly what we do with a sound system. It would the water that was not waves and crashing like an ocean, but a simple lake that at that point seemed to be calm. It would just act as an amphitheater. It would make him able to speak to more people at one time. And so he chooses Peter's boat. And he says, Peter, just push me out a little bit here and let me speak to the people. And it says he sat down in the boat. He sat down and taught the people from the boat. And he chooses Peter's boat, which seems like a pretty simple deal, right? I mean, it's just a normal piece of equipment that Peter had. It was something that was just normal. It was part of his everyday life. And God chooses to use simple, normal things in our everyday life to be used by God. God starts where we are. And Jesus does something here that he does probably to us as well, and that is he takes Peter out of his normal routine. If the goal is to get something done, if whether it's planning a vacation or something like painting a house, it probably requires a change of routine. We can't keep doing the same things and get the house painted, right? Because last I checked, I've yet to be able to paint my house or my recliner. I mean, it would be amazing if I could get a drone and I could just control the drone from my chair, my recliner, and I could paint my house. That would be sweet. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to get out of the recliner this spring and summer and paint the house. Sounds depressing. It'll be fine. But in this case, it was Peter's routine that was getting interrupted, and the routine went something like this: fish through the night, catch fish, clean the nets, and then sell the fish. But this day is different. It went like this: catch no fish, which for anybody that goes fishing is just a disgusting day. If you go fishing and you don't catch anything, it's just frustrating. And he's a professional. It's not like me, like an amateur. I'm just out there for fun, right? But for him, this is how he lived. And so he's out there, he catches no fish. But then he still has to clean the nets because the nets have gotten dirty because it's got other things have been caught in there and just different stuff. So he cleans his nets, listens to Jesus teach, and then Jesus gets done teaching. He says, Peter, go cast your nets out. And then it's catch more fish than he's ever caught. Then he's going to clean nets again. You see how this is going. But this miracle, when Jesus does this, we're going to talk about it in a minute, this isn't without precedence. It is an interesting moment where God is doing something that he has done previously, and that's providing miraculous food for people. And all of this took place because Jesus was using an ordinary boat of an ordinary fisherman. Now, I know later we know who Peter becomes, but at this point, he's an ordinary fisherman with an ordinary boat. Verse 4 says, when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, now go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish. And this is part of what, when we're called to follow Jesus, there's also a call to obedience. Verse 5 says, Master Simon replied, we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing, but if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. Jesus told Peter to go out deeper and to let down the nets. Now, it makes sense for Jesus to give instructions about fishing if Jesus was a fisherman. But Jesus wasn't a fisherman. In fact, Jesus' two probably areas of expertise is probably carpentry and the Bible. He was a rabbi, right? And I know it wasn't the Bible at the time, but we know he would be an expert in the law. And the people wouldn't know that because he's not educated as a rabbi, but he is clearly a rabbi. People are listening to him. And it would make sense for Peter to listen if it was to Jesus, if it was on a spiritual matter. It would make sense. But in an area where Peter is the expert, it makes no sense. How quick are we to dismiss the input from others when we're operating in an area that we're good at? There's a consistent theme here. We're going to talk about it some more, and the theme is humility. Peter demonstrates humility to listen to Jesus even when it was in Peter's domain. I mean, it's one of those things where Peter and his friends were washing their nets. They were done for the day. It wasn't an easy process. It was work to clean their nets. They did it every day. It was not like they're like, oh, this is the fun part, guys. I mean, cleaning up after painting a house is not the fun part. I mean, if you're done, maybe that's the fun part, like if you're finished, but when you just got to put stuff away so you can get it out next day, like it's not the fun part. There's a lot of work to clean out brushes and sprayers and all those things. It's not the most fun. Peter doesn't immediately do it. He hesitates. Because this isn't like he just got done fishing and he's putting back his tackle box and a fishing pole. This is, I'm cleaning nets and I'm working at it. And throwing out the nets would require hours of cleaning again. Jesus calls every one of us to obedience. And are we willing to be obedient to what God asks us to do, or will we say no because we think we know better? The challenge for us all is to trust God even when it doesn't make sense. Because there's nothing about this that makes sense. Nothing about this makes any sense. Oh, I'm going to trust the rabbi who tells me to go throw my net into deeper water because he knows so much about this whole fishing thing. Because he spends every night of his life trying to earn a living throwing net into the water. And now we know this, that night was the time to catch the fish, and this was probably not the ideal time of catching fish. God may ask us all to step into places that we aren't comfortable with, and we may not see how it will work, but God gives us opportunities and open doors. So the result of this whole process, we know the result because we've read it, but the result of this whole thing, of this act of obedience by Peter, of being willing to go out deeper and to throw in the net, is a miraculous catch. Verse 6 says, and this time their nets were so full of fish, they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish and on the verge of sinking. A simple act of obeying Jesus results in a catch of fish so great, Peter's going to call his friends over. Usually when I call my friends when I'm catching a fish, it's not because I want their help, it's because I want to gloat about it. Right? I mean, look at this fish I caught. Like, it's a bass, you got it by the lip, and you're like, look at this thing. You should learn how to fish too. I would not. I might. You might. I mean, how many, okay, just let's, I'm own honesty, how many of you would gloat over catching a big fish? Okay, glad I'm not alone. But Peter, the blessing is so great. It's so amazing. The catch of fish is so large that he's calling his friends over. And I know they worked together and they did some things together. But here's the deal. God's work in our lives and the results of God's work in our life is meant to be shared. It's meant to be done together. It's meant to be enjoyed together. It's meant to be celebrated together. And that's the importance of community. That's the importance of working together. That's the importance of having friends and people that we can serve together with. And you and I, we may see what we have as ordinary, but when God sees it, it can become extraordinary. When God calls us, when God is asking us to use the ordinary that we have, it becomes extraordinary. It becomes incredible. It can become amazing. There are things that can be accomplished through my life and your life and together that we can't do individually. And God wants to use the ordinary things of our lives to accomplish His work. So the question becomes, what areas of our lives is God wanting us to let Him use? What things do we have that He's wanting to use? What time does He want to use of ours? What skill might we have that He wants to employ? What does He want to use in our lives? Every one of us probably has something different that God is wanting to use if we are willing to let Him. And the question that becomes is, how do we respond to God's call? And we need to respond to God's call. Verse 8 says, when Simon Peter realized what had happened, he fell to his knees before Jesus and said, "Oh Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man." For he was awestruck by the number of fish they had caught, as were the others with him. Look, Peter's response is pretty interesting. "Oh Lord, please leave me." Peter realizes his unworthiness before Jesus. He realizes he is standing in the presence of somebody that he should not be around. He has the same response, essentially, that Isaiah has in the midst of that call. He says, "Woe is me, I'm a man of unclean lips." He's afraid he's going to be struck dead. I mean, he's worried. And Peter looks and goes, "I am worthless. How in the world can I work with you? How in the world can you use me? What? I don't even belong in your presence, Jesus. Go away from me." But that's not God's heart. See, because he'd already come close to Peter on purpose. He'd already come to Peter for a reason. He already came to Peter because he knew Peter had a future. He knew that Peter had potential. He knew that Peter was going to be something. He already knew where he was leading him. He already knew he was getting him to the place where he was going to become the elder, but he had to start where Peter was. Again, he doesn't reveal everything to Peter. He just says, "Come and follow. I'll help you out." What Peter thought was a disqualifier was the thing that made him usable. Because he recognized he was not worthy. Right? When we understand that it's because of God's work in us that we can accomplish stuff, then we become usable in God's hand. When we think we're something, that's usually not a good sign. When we become a little too proud, and I don't care what level that we attain in life, we need to remain humble, because proud people who let their achievements go to their heads, tend to eventually make bad decisions. Remember, living life to get to the destination we want to get to is important. Every decision that we make is moving us in a direction toward a destination. Make sure the decisions that you're making are leading to the correct destination. If the idea is to become somebody who pleases God, let's make decisions that are helping us live that out. And understand that humility is huge. It is such an important component. And then Jesus, in his kindness, verse 10 says, his partners, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, were also amazed. Jesus replied to Simon, don't be afraid. That's multiple parts of that statement, because it's somewhat of a response to what Peter just said. Leave me, because I am not worthy to be in your presence. I'm a sinful man. It's about that. But it's also about the future. It's about what Peter is thinking. I'm going to follow him. But Jesus is saying, don't be afraid in either side. Don't be afraid because of your brokenness, because I'm going to work with that. I'm going to help you. And he's saying, don't be afraid, because I'm going to be with you to help you do what I'm calling you to do. I'm going to help you in both sides. I'm going to help you become something that you can't believe you can be. And you're going to do something that's amazing. And he says, don't be afraid from now on. You'll be fishing for people. Jesus calls us beyond our fears. A new purpose for Peter's life. No longer is he worried about fishing. He's going to be concerned about fishing for people. Peter thought of himself just as a fisherman. He expected that's what his life would be. Go to work fishing every night, catch fish, clean nets, sell fish, start over the next day. That's what he thought life was going to be. That's what he assumed his life was going to amount to. He was going to be a fisherman. He was going to run a fishing business. That's what he was going to do. But Jesus had a different idea. Jesus has said, you're going to catch people. You're going to help people know who I am. You're going to help people know who God is. You're going to connect people to God. You're going to bring them from where they are currently, and they're going to experience things, because you're going to be a difference maker. You're going to point people to Jesus. You're going to catch people. And I realize that for all of us in some way, like, life is about routines and it's about life stuff, right? We get up, we go to work, we're kind of like Peter, and some people love their work. Some people, like, they're just doing their work because they're getting paid, and it's not their life's dream. But here's the deal: wherever you find yourself, you can't get caught in the routine. You have to look at what you're doing every single day as being a mission that God has given you, and He's got a reason for you to be where you are. He's working with you in the spot you are today to accomplish something. He wants to help you fish for people as well. He wants to help you point people towards Jesus. It is something that every one of us are called to, just as Peter was called to. Peter was called to that. He is calling every one of us the same way, to be witnesses and make disciples. And the problem is, as soon as I say that, everybody's like, not everybody, but where tendencies are, I can't do that. I'm not called by God to do that. The Bible would tell you differently. The Great Commission tells you that you are to go and make disciples of all nations. It's the same command he gave to his disciples. And then on the mount, before he ascends into heaven, he says, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Like it is our job. And all of us are called to that. So the words to Peter apply right here. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people. Because God has given all of us that mission. All of us are given that mission. We are going to be doing other things. We're going to be working in different places. We're going to do other ministries as well. But all of us are responsible to fish for people. It's so easy for us to think about what we can't do, what we don't think we're qualified for. We're like, there's no way. All the ways I'm not the right person for the job or ministry. That's exactly what Peter was struggling with. He wasn't good enough. He knew all the problems he had. He knew his anger. He knew his impulsiveness. He knew his tendency to speak before he thought. And here's the good news. God knew all of that as well. He knew every one of Peter's struggles. He knew where he was currently at, and he was going to help him get to where he needed to be. God knew when he called him, and Jesus, when he calls Peter to follow, he knows all those things, and he knows where he's going to take him. And he knows what he needs in the future, so he takes a guy with some rough edges and figures out how to smooth some of them. And it takes a bit, as we already know. And the response is crazy. Verse 11 says, as soon as they landed, so as soon as they get the fish onto the shore, I don't know what they do with them all, but I don't know if Peter just says, hey, you go sell these. I don't know. I don't care. But as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. Now, that's where you get nervous, okay? That's a pretty crazy response, right? And so, you're thinking, oh, no. This is when the pastor says, I got to leave everything and follow Jesus. Sort of. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that God is any way calling every person in this room to pack up and quit what you're doing for work, and I don't think that's happening. But I know this. Every one of us ought to be open to whatever God speaks into our lives and be willing to put aside our plans and our dreams to follow his plans for our life. And we need to surrender our plans. We need to submit our plans to him. Just like the architect has got to go submit his plans to, and to the authorities and get plans approved and all that stuff. We got to submit our plans to the architect of the life that we're going to live. And we're going to say, Jesus, help us to live the life that you've designed for us to live. Don't let us get caught into routines of life that aren't fulfilling the purpose and plan that you have for me. And whatever that looks like. And I'm just saying that there is a moment in our life that God was going to speak to us. And it's going to be about ministry and about serving. And it may be volunteering at Mission Hill. It may be volunteering in another ministry. It may be who is it that Jesus is helping you to reach? Who is it that Jesus has put in your life so that you can have an impact on them to bring them closer to Jesus? Because we're all commanded to go and make disciples. We're all commanded to be witnesses. So who is it that God has put close to us? Who is it that God is working on their lives and wants us to be a part of it? Who is it? Who is God working to bring to him by using us? Look, there's all kinds of things that you can do around here. Like there's the kids ministry and nursery, and we might need people to serve in the nursery. just crossed my mind as I'm like, that's something that, kids ministry, youth ministry, the grounds, like, I know Joe loves to mow, but I think she'd take help. Just saying. Hospitality, other things. There's all kinds of places where you can serve. So we should be serving, but I don't want to limit it there. I don't want us to limit it to what we're doing within the walls of Mission Hill, because that would miss it. That's part of it. But the other side of that is, what is it that God is doing for our community? And how are we being used to reach people and to see people come to know Jesus? Who is it that God is wanting you to invite to Easter? Who is it that God is wanting you to have an impact on around your workplace or your neighborhood? Who is it that God is speaking to you about helping them know who He is? And if you don't have anybody listed in your life at the moment that you're trying to reach, that is a prayer point. That is a response moment. You should be saying, Jesus, who could I reach? Who is somebody that I could disciple? Who is somebody that I could be a witness to? Who is somebody that I can invite to Easter? Because the greatest decision that anyone can ever make is following Jesus. So, I guess the response is this. Are you willing to let Jesus use what you have? You might not have nets, but what you do have, God can use it. If you just say, Jesus, everything I have is yours. Use it however you want. You may not know how what you have can be used by God. I'm confident Peter didn't think that his boat was going to be used to teach people. And I'm confident Peter never thought his life was going to be used to impact people for eternity. Will you obey even if it doesn't make sense? If God speaks to you about getting involved in something, or talking with someone about Jesus, or inviting them to Easter, are you going to obey? Number 3, are you ready to leave everything to follow Jesus? It isn't always a requirement. Paul still supported himself by being a tent maker. So look, there's precedent in the scriptures not to leave everything behind and follow, but there's also precedent in the scriptures to leave everything behind and follow Jesus. So what I'm saying is there's both options here. What I think the question is are you willing to leave everything to follow Him? So if He called you to leave everything, would you? It isn't easy, but God would help you. Sometimes the things you leave behind, God brings back to use at the right time. Jesus calls ordinary people for an extraordinary mission. Just as He called Peter, He's calling every one of us to follow Him and to serve Him with our lives. The question is, will you say yes? Let's pray. Lord, thank You for this morning. God, thank You for Your incredible mission that You call all of us to, that starts with following You. Lord, I pray this morning that every one of us in this room, would take a little inventory of our lives and would be willing to say, Jesus, I will follow You. And I'll leave everything if that's what You call me to. I will trust You. And Lord, everything in my life, I will surrender to Your plans. I pray, Lord, that You would speak to every single person in this room. Lord, that there wouldn't be a single life that doesn't hear you prompting them in some way. Lord, I pray for those that maybe have never started a relationship with you or following you. I pray, Lord, that today would be the day that they start that life, a life of following Jesus. Lord, for those that have followed for some time, or maybe a long time, Lord, I pray today that every person would say, Lord, whatever you ask of me, I will do it. Lord, I pray that all of us would surrender our lives to your leadership and that we would be involved in the mission you've called us to. Ultimately, making disciples, helping others find and follow Jesus. I pray, Lord, that we will be witnesses. We will share the message of Jesus. And Lord, as we look towards Easter, we would say, who is it, Lord, in our lives that you are wanting us to invest in? Who is it you're wanting us to invite? Who is it that you're speaking to that it would be their moment, their time to experience the love of the Savior? Lord, I pray, God, we will see friends and family experience the love of Christ this Easter season. And Lord, I pray there'll be people in this room that would step into new ministry opportunities, whether it be serving here at Mission Hill or serving in other ministry ways around our city. Lord, I'm praying that we would all be people who are serving our world and seeing people come to know you. Lord, in these closing moments, have your way in every one of our lives. Speak to us, I pray. In Jesus' name.